Ethan Carter moved into Willow Pines on a smooth Saturday morning. The neighborhood looked calm and perfect. Fresh fences stood in a row like soldiers, and every house had the same bright white mailbox. He stood in the driveway, hands in pockets, feeling proud of his new home. The house was not very large, but it had charm. He hoped this would be the place where he could work on his music in peace. He had been a sound designer for years and finally saved enough to buy a house that offered quiet. That quiet ended sooner than expected. By the second morning, Ethan sat on his porch with a mug of coffee. Soft notes of a piano track floated from inside his small studio. The morning breeze was kind, and for a moment everything felt perfect. Then came loud footsteps on the path. He turned and saw a woman walking toward him with a clipboard tucked under her arm. Her steps were neat and sharp, as if she was marching. She wore a crisp blouse and a frown that could slice paper. "Good morning," Ethan said politely. The woman looked at his yard before looking back at him. "Good morning. I'm Olivia Brooks, the chair of the Homeowners Association. You must be the new resident." Ethan smiled and stood up. "Yes, just moved in, still unpacking." She nodded once, her eyes scanning every inch of his property. "You must have received the book of HOA rules." "I did," Ethan said. "It's quite thick. It is for everyone's good. We protect the value and beauty of Willow Pines." She pointed to his front steps. "For example, the porch light has a clear glass shade, not frosted. That is against the design rule." Ethan blinked. "It's just a light. It must match the neighborhood standard," Olivia said. "Also, your fence paint seems one shade darker than the approved tone. I like this color." Ethan tried to sound friendly, but her cold tone began to annoy him. Olivia wrote quickly in her notepad, "You'll receive a written notice to fix it within 7 days." He set down his coffee. "With all respect, I didn't move here to be told what color my fence should be. I'll live here peacefully, but I'm not following rules that don't make sense." Olivia's pencil froze. She looked up, shocked. "Excuse me?" "Excuse me, I'm happy to keep things clean and safe," he said. "But I won't follow every small rule. My fence is fine, my light is fine. I'll keep it that way." Her face turned red. "We have standards, Mr. Carter. Those rules are not suggestions. If you will not cooperate, we will have to take this matter to the board." Ethan sighed. "Then take it to the board." He picked up his guitar from the porch chair and strummed a calm chord. Olivia's lips pressed tight. "This is not a joke. I'm not joking." She turned around sharply and walked away, tapping her heels against the walkway like a warning signal. Ethan watched her leave, part amused, part confused. It seemed strange to him. People around here smiled the day he moved in, waved, and offered pies and cookies. But now, as Olivia moved through the street, some neighbors peeked through curtains, whispering. Ethan had a feeling that within a few hours, everyone in Willow Pines would know the story of the new man who said no to the HOA rules. That afternoon, Ethan continued working in his studio, adjusted the sound panels, and tapped keys on his keyboard. The rhythm made him forget the world for a while. Then came a phone call from his neighbor across the street, an old man named Harold. "Ethan, son, you might want to keep your music low for a few days. Olivia runs a tight ship around here." Ethan laughed softly. "I'll try, Harold. Don't worry. Not playing rock. Just soft piano. Doesn't matter. She's strict about everything. She even fined me last year for putting a blue garden gnome instead of a green one." Ethan did not know whether to laugh or sigh. He thanked Harold and hung up. Sunset came, painting the street gold. Nice. He felt calm again until 2 figures appeared at the gate, Olivia and another man carrying stacks of papers. She handed him a yellow envelope, eyes cold as ice. "This is your official notice," she said. "If you do not follow within 7 days, further action will be taken." Ethan opened the paper, but did not read it. "Olivia, this is unnecessary. It is the rule," she said. "The community depends on order. As far as I know, freedom matters too," Ethan replied slowly. Her eyes met his with silent challenge. For a second, he saw something behind the pretty brief spark of surprise, maybe even curiosity. Then she left again, shoulders stiff, heading toward her perfect car parked down the street. Ethan stood in his driveway for a while. The air felt heavy with judgment and the strange humor of life. He had lived here for 2 days and already had an enemy. Yet something about Olivia's strange intensity kept circling in his mind. He told himself it was just frustration, but deep inside, A small thought whispered that this story had only just begun. The sun came up bright and warm, but Ethan's morning felt cold. The short meeting with Olivia had already become the main story of Willow Pines. When he walked to get his mail, two people across the street whispered and looked away. Someone had written a note on his mailbox that said, "Remember the rules." He shook his head and took the note off. Inside, Ethan tried to start his morning like normal. He made coffee, turned on his keyboard, and began to work on a calm sound mix. He thought if he ignored the drama, it might fade. But things started getting stranger each hour. A man from the HOA dropped off another notice saying that the board would review Ethan's non-compliance. The wording sounded serious, but Ethan still wanted to stay calm. He had built a career managing large office projects, and he knew how to deal with pressure. He wasn't about to let a group of neighbors bully him over fence paint and porch lights. By noon, he heard voices outside again. Olivia stood in front of his house, talking to two other people from the board. She waved her clipboard while pointing at his lawn. Ethan opened his window. "It is not personal," she announced loudly. "We keep this neighborhood beautiful, and beauty needs order. Everyone follows the same rules." Ethan called out, "You can say that quietly, Olivia. I'm right here." She turned and crossed her arms. "Then act like you care about your community." "I do," he said. "I just believe beauty is not the same as control." Her lips pressed into a tight line. The neighbors turned to watch. It was clear that the disagreement had become a show. That evening, while Ethan worked on his laptop, he saw flashing lights through his front window. Two police cars stopped in front of his house. His heart jumped out. He stepped outside and found Olivia talking quickly to one of the officers. She's saying, "You refuse to cooperate?" One officer explained. "Mind if we ask you a few things?" Ethan stayed polite. "Of course, you're welcome to look around. There's no problem here." The officer walked around the yard, looked at the fence and the light fixture, and then came back shaking his head. "I don't see any reason to get involved. It seems like a neighborhood disagreement." Olivia's face turned red again. "He broke HOA rules." "This is a violation." "With respect, ma'am, that's not a police matter. You can issue a fine if your HOA allows, but we can't arrest a man for having the wrong shade of paint," the officer said calmly. Ethan tried not to smile. The officer shook his hand and told him to have a good night. The lights faded as the cars drove away. Olivia stood frozen for a moment, then turned and walked off without a word. The next morning, Ethan found his phone full of messages. Some neighbors were angry that he defied the HOA, while others secretly cheered him on. A younger couple down the street dropped by and said, "You might be the first person who ever told Olivia no." Ethan thanked them but didn't. He think being famous in a small neighborhood was much of a win. Still, a small voice in his mind said this situation might not be just about a lawn or a fence. It felt bigger, like a lesson he hadn't learned yet. He went to his office downtown that afternoon, a modern space filled with plans and models of homes. His assistant handed him a schedule. There was a note about an HOA management review meeting in 2 weeks. Willow Pines was on that list. Ethan looked at the file and chuckled softly. How strange fate could be. No one in this neighborhood knew that his company actually managed the contracts for the whole HOA board. He usually let the management team handle those tasks, but now he felt a reason to take interest. At sunset, the quiet street carried a mix of tension and curiosity. Some kids rode bikes past Ethan's house, laughing and pointing toward his fence like it was part of some legend forming in their small community. Olivia's car slowed as she passed by. She didn't stop, but their eyes met for a second through the glass. There was still anger in her posture, yet behind it something else flickered, maybe confusion or doubt. Ethan sat on his porch for a long time after that. The smell of freshly cut grass from another yard drifted through the air. He wondered how such a calm place could turn into a storm so quickly. He didn't hate Olivia. In fact, he could not stop thinking about how certain she looked when she gave orders, and how that same certainty started to crumble after the police left. There was something deeper there, something hurt or hidden. The night went silent again. Lights glowed evenly along the street. Ethan knew this was far from over. In every rhythm of conflict, there is a pulse of change, and the beat of that pulse was just beginning to grow stronger in Willow Pines. A week passed after the police came to Ethan's home. The story spread around Willow Pines until everyone seemed to have an opinion. Some thought Ethan was stubborn. Others thought he was the only brave one who ever refused Olivia. She tried to keep her usual control, but something had changed in her face. Her eyes looked tired, as if the peace of the neighborhood had started to slip through her fingers. Ethan focused on his work and stayed polite when people stared. Most of his time was now divided between his project and quiet walks around the lake behind the homes. On one of those walks, he saw Olivia on the path. She was talking on her phone, but stopped the moment she noticed him. For a few seconds, they stood in silence before she spoke. "You enjoy causing trouble, don't you?" she said. Her tone was sharp, but her voice was softer than before. Ethan shook his head. "I don't enjoy it. I just believe a person can live peacefully without obeying every small rule. I meant no harm." She crossed her arms. "You embarrassed me in front of the board. They say I made the HOA look bad. That wasn't my goal," he said kindly. "Maybe they overreacted too. People want simple things like being left alone to breathe." Olivia looked away toward the water. "If we let everyone bend rules, this place will lose order. Or maybe it will gain peace," he said quietly. "Sometimes peace and order are not the same." A small breeze moved between them. Olivia seemed ready to answer, but stopped herself. She looked at him again and asked in a lower voice, "What kind of work do you really do, Ethan?" "I manage property projects," he said, "but I make music too. It's what keeps me calm." She nodded slowly. "That explains the sound coming from your house. I thought it was loud, but I listened more carefully one night. It was soft. It reminded me of a song my father used to hum." Ethan smiled faintly. "Maybe that's why you didn't find me for noise." Her lips twitched in a small smile before she caught herself. "Don't test your luck," she said, but it sounded like a joke. That moment broke some of the tension between them, even though neither would admit it. They continued walking in opposite directions, both feeling something they couldn't name. Later that week, the HOA meeting took place in the community hall. Olivia sat at the front beside two other board members. She looked professional and calm, but her thoughts kept drifting to Ethan's words. When his name appeared on the agenda, she straightened her posture. The rest of the members argued about how to handle him. Some said fine him again. Others said they had to find a better solution because they could not risk another scene. Olivia listened quietly. Her hand rested on the wood table while her mind ran in circles. Finally, she said, "Leave him to me. I'll speak with him again." One member frowned. "You already did, Olivia. Didn't go well." She looked back at them with certainty. "Let me handle it differently this time." Nobody dared to question her tone. The meeting ended with that final word. When she came home, she sat at her kitchen table staring at the copy of the rule book she had written herself 3 years earlier. It had been her pride and her shield, but lately it felt like a wall built too high. She asked herself why she cared so much about control. In truth, she had lost many pieces of her own life while trying to perfect others. 2 days later, she went to Ethan's house again. He opened the door before she knocked. "Olivia," he said in surprise. "Did I break another rule?" "No," she said firmly. "I came to talk." He let her in. The living room smelled of fresh coffee. Sheets of music covered the desk. Olivia sat down carefully as if she didn't belong in a room without a list of instructions. "I wanted to understand you," she said quietly. "You seem calm while everyone else is ready to argue."
"Oh, you done?"
Poured her coffee. "I've seen too many storms, Olivia. Fighting every moment is easy. Staying calm takes work." Her eyes softened. "Maybe you're right. I thought control meant peace. But now everyone dislikes me and I can't sleep at night." "Sometimes I think it's all falling apart," he answered gently. "Maybe it's not falling apart. Maybe it's trying to change." The words settled between them like warm air. Olivia looked around the small house. It was simple, imperfect, but full of life. She realized she missed that kind of freedom. Before she left, she said quietly, "You're not what I expected, Ethan Carter." He smiled. "Neither are you, Olivia Brooks." When the door closed, both stood for a long time thinking of what had just happened. For the first time since the trouble began, there was no anger. Instead, there was a strange spark of understanding, like two distant notes that finally started to form a melody. In that small corner of Willow Pines, something unseen began weaving the first lines of a connection neither could ignore. 2 weeks later, the air in Willow Pines felt different. The neighbors were quieter, and the usual gossip had turned into whispers about changes coming from the top of the community board. Olivia still acted calm in public, but inside she was nervous. Word had reached her that an inspection from the management company was scheduled for the next day. She wanted everything to look orderly, even though she sensed something was wrong. That night she sat at her table going through documents. Her rule book looked worn and heavy. The words that once gave her pride now filled her with doubt. She thought about Ethan and the way he listened when she spoke. He had made her see that control could be a cage. She closed the folder and stared at her phone, almost dialing his number, then placing it back down. It wasn't her way to seek help, but something about him kept breaking through the walls she had built. The next morning, the community hall filled with board members and staff from the management firm. Olivia had arranged the chairs and neatly stacked her reports. When the representative entered, she stood ready with a smile. The man introduced himself as Frank Davis from Carter Properties Group. Olivia froze when she heard the name. She knew the company managed their contracts, but had not connected it to Ethan. Frank began the meeting by speaking clearly and politely. "We are here to discuss performance and community relations. There have been several complaints about board leadership." Olivia listened, heart pounding. The members exchanged nervous glances. She tried to speak confidently. "We handle all matters according to the rules. Every decision follows the handbook." Frank nodded. "We appreciate structure, but our concern is tone and fairness. The company's director feels that communication here has become too harsh. The board will need to account for recent incidents, including the one reported by the new resident Ethan Carter." Suddenly, the room fell silent. Every face turned toward her. Olivia's throat went dry. "He is just a resident," she said softly. "He refused to follow local guidelines." Frank glanced at his papers, then said, "He isn't only a resident. Ethan Carter is the owner of Carter Properties Group." No one spoke for several seconds. Olivia's heart stopped. The sound of shuffling papers and shocked breathing filled the room. She looked around and saw disbelief on every face. The man she had argued with, the man she nearly fined and threatened, was her employer. Frank continued, "Mr. Carter has asked me to review current leadership. Based on complaints and conduct reports, we must decide whether new management is required." Olivia felt the room spin for a moment. The sharp posture she always held began to soften. She had been proud, maybe too proud. Now humility pressed against her chest. She stood up and addressed the group. "I understand the concern. I acted firmly because I thought I was protecting our neighborhood. I never meant harm. If my methods caused issues, I accept responsibility." Her voice broke slightly, but she didn't hide it. The others stared, unsure what to do. Frank nodded politely and said he would speak with Ethan later in the day. The meeting ended quietly. Olivia walked out into the bright sunlight, feeling lighter and yet afraid of what would come next. That afternoon she decided to see him before he saw her file. She went to his house, holding her folder like a shield. "I guessed you might come," he said kindly. Olivia took a deep breath. "You could have told me who you were." He shrugged. "You never asked? Wanted to be treated like anyone else here?" She gave a small, nervous laugh. "I treated you worse than anyone else." "You treated me like someone who needed to be taught rules," he said gently. "Are you going to fire me?" Ethan paused. "What do you think should happen?" She lowered her gaze. "Maybe I don't deserve to continue. I made too many people feel small. I thought it was leadership, but maybe it was fear." He studied her face. "You were strict, yes, but you also cared for this place more than anyone. Sometimes people confuse protection with control." Olivia looked up at him. "So what happens now?" "I asked Frank to let you resign quietly," he said. "No scene, no public shame. Start fresh somewhere new." Her shoulders relaxed with relief. "You're giving me another chance?" "I believe in second chances," he said. "Everyone needs one, even the rule makers." She smiled through tears, a real tired smile. "I never thought the man who fought the HOA rules would be the kindest person I've ever met." He smiled back. Life has a good sense of humor. Later that night, Olivia left a handwritten note on his porch. In it, she thanked him for his fairness and for showing her that peace was more than rules. Ethan read it under the yellow porch light, feeling strangely moved. The battle between them had ended, but something warmer had begun to rise quietly in its place. The whole neighborhood slept without gossip that night, as if visiting peace had decided to stay. The next few weeks passed slowly after Olivia left the position. The neighborhood started to change in small ways. The new board members were friendlier, children played freely on the streets, and laughter replaced gossip. Ethan noticed the difference each morning when he walked outside to water the small row of plants near his gate. For the first time, Willow Pines felt like the calm and free community he had hoped for when he moved in, yet his thoughts often drifted to Olivia. He had not seen her since the day she handed him her note. Sometimes he wondered if she had moved away or simply chosen to stay hidden for a while. Her absence gave him a strange feeling, somewhere between peace and emptiness. He had not expected her to leave such a space in his thoughts. One quiet Saturday evening, Ethan sat on his porch, tuning his guitar. The sunset glowed orange across the roofs. A soft wind moved through the trees, carrying the distant sound of laughter from a block away. As he strummed a few notes, he heard footsteps approaching on the path. When he looked up, he saw Olivia standing there. She was holding 2 cups of coffee. Her posture showed nervousness and hope mixed together. "Mind if I sit?" she asked softly. He nodded. "Of course. You found my favorite time of day." She handed him a cup and took the chair across from him. Silence filled the space for a short moment before she spoke again. "I went away for a while to stay with my sister. I needed to think. I guess I also needed to stop running things." "You look more relaxed," Ethan said. "Ow, that's good for you." Olivia smiled faintly, relaxed and lost. "I didn't realize how much of my life was the HOA. Once it was gone, I didn't know who I was. But then I thought about your words, about how peace isn't the same as control. I'm learning that." Ethan nodded. "Peace can be as simple as sitting here with a cup of coffee. I never tried that version of peace before," she said. "I always believed it had to be earned." They both watched the sky fade from orange to deep blue. There was a still comfort between them, the kind of calm that doesn't need to be explained. Olivia looked at the small garden by his porch and smiled. "Your plants look nice now. I guess you finally followed one of our old rules." He laughed. "Maybe one of the better ones." The sound of their laughter carried lightly across the yard. For a while they talked about simple things, childhood stories, favorite books, bad cooking moments, and embarrassing memories neither had told anyone before. Each story made them laugh more. The wall between them kept fading with every word. Later, Olivia turned serious again. "I want to use what I learned here," she said. "Maybe start something that helps people instead of policing them. I've been thinking of opening a small community art center, a place where people can paint, play music, and meet without fear of judgment." Ethan looked at her with quiet pride. "It sounds perfect. I suppose you want help drawing up the plan?" She met his eyes. "I was hoping you'd help me design it, maybe play some of your music there." "I can do both," he said, smiling. "Maybe that's how we both start over." The wind moved softly again, brushing her hair across her cheek. For one moment their eyes met in the calm glow of the porch light. It was not the look of 2 people still fighting over fences or fines. It was the look of 2 hearts recognizing something gentle and real. As the night grew darker, Olivia stood and said she should head home. Ethan walked her to her car. Before she opened the door, she turned back to him. "Thank you for not giving up on me," she said. "No one ever showed me patience the way you did." He answered with quiet warmth. "Thank you for showing me that even the strictest hearts can change." She smiled, got in her car, and drove away slowly down the peaceful rows of willow pines. Ethan watched the lights fade and felt a stronger sense of calm than ever before. The story that had begun with anger and police cars now rested in understanding and kindness. Weeks later, the community art center opened near the lake. Olivia directed it, and Ethan helped with the design and the music events. On weekends, families gathered to paint, listen to songs, and talk freely. People said it was the best thing Willow Pines ever built. Every evening when the music floated across the water, Ethan and Olivia often stood side by side, watching the sunset. No rulebook stood between them now. What tied them together was silent but strong, a bond formed after conflict, forgiveness, and trust. Willow Pines finally became what it was meant to be, a place run not by rules, but by hearts that had learned how to listen.